everybody, Matthew Collar here, and I want to welcome you into a new series in which we honor the greatest Viking head coach of all time, Bud Grant, with some stories that maybe you haven't heard before. You may think you know everything about Bud after all these years, but we have dug deep into the archives to shed some more light on Grant's legend. And thanks to NFL researcher Colin, aka Jaguar Gator 9 on YouTube, for bringing this together with us. And make sure you go check out his amazing NFL history channel. All right, let's get into this incredible Bud Grant story. The year is 1984, and the Minnesota Vikings are the laughing stock of the NFL. After more than a decade and a half of success under the guidance of Bud Grant, Grant retired following the 1983 season and gave the franchise to his wide receivers coach, Les Steckel. What could possibly go wrong with Steckel as a successor? Well, just about everything. The team finished 3-13, losing 11 of its final 12 games, and finished with the worst winning percentage since 1962, all while boasting the worst defense in football. In just one short season, Steckel destroyed the Vikings, and there was only one man who could repair the damage. That man was none other than Bud Grant, who came out of retirement to make the Vikings respectable again. He had saved the Vikings before and felt an obligation to do it again. Said Grant on why he came out of retirement, quote, "When Max Winter, the club president, came to me, he told me the elevator had gone down the shaft to the bottom and it was a long climb up. He said that they needed credibility and the best way was to hire me back. I was the quickest way to do it. It sounded like they needed it desperately." And Winter was not kidding. It took Grant just one game to bring the Vikings back, because in week 1 of the 1985 season, the Vikings let the NFL world know they were back and pulled off an absolutely stunning upset over the San Francisco 49ers. But while you may know about the upset itself, you might not know what happened before the game that propelled the Vikings to this magical upset. Because today we're going to talk about Bud Grant's pregame speech before the game against the 49ers that turned out to be the speech that saved the Minnesota Vikings. To kick off opening week of the 85 season, no one, not a single soul, was giving the Vikings any chance at winning this one. How could you? In one corner, you had a Vikings team that went 3-13 the year before, and in the other corner, the San Francisco 49ers, a team coming off one of the greatest seasons of all time. In 1984, the 49ers won their second Super Bowl in franchise history and did so with a 15-1 record, all while having the second best offense in football that averaged almost 30 points per game and the best defense in football, allowing just 14 points per game. That means, since the two-point conversion did not exist back then, that on average, the 49ers had outscored their opponents by an average of 3 possessions in 1984, and in the playoffs, outscored their opponents 82-26, making easy work of the Giants, Bears, and Dolphins. Oh, and when the Vikings and 49ers met in week 15 of the 84 season in front of a national television audience on CBS, it was a massacre as the 49ers won 51-7 in a game where San Francisco got 6 sacks. Joe Montana threw 3 touchdown passes and finished with a 150 rating. The 49ers outgained the Vikings 521-265 in that game. To make a long story short, you had a complete mismatch in week 1 of 85 with one of the best teams of all time from the previous year going up against one of the worst teams in football. San Francisco was an 11-point favorite entering the game for a reason, because no one was giving the Vikings any chance to win. It was going to take something special for Minnesota to pull off this one, and sure enough, Bud Grant knew exactly what it was going to take. The Minnesota Vikings first joined the NFL in 1961, meaning that the 1985 season was their 25th, and to celebrate their silver anniversary, Bud Grant held a banquet with a bunch of former players, all members of the silver anniversary team that helped make the Vikings organization what they were, including the likes of Fran Tarkington, Mick Tingelhoff, and Carl Eller. And I should note that while this was a banquet for the silver anniversary team, all the members of the current 85 team attended the banquet as well. The original plan was to have Grant speak for a few minutes in a prepared speech and then return to his seat, but Grant ended up not doing that. He got emotional, tearing up, and then said about the silver anniversary players, quote, "I wish I could take the hearts out of all these great players at the head of the table and implant them into the hearts of our present players." He used the speech as a motivational tool of sorts to call out his current team. In essence, he was saying that the great Vikings of the past had heart, and he wished he could say the same about the current team. And Grant admitted afterwards that was his grand plan all along. Bring the current team to the banquet, get them to appreciate the Vikings of the past, to learn a little something about them, and then to fire them up to get them to dig deep. As Grant said at the time, "I hope to get to our players. After seeing all of the former players as a group, I realized how fortunate the Vikings were to have had people of that caliber. What made them stand out is that they had great athletes' heart. Maybe our players got a little bit in the way of osmosis. Our players realized that the Vikings of the past weren't any different, except for the former players excelled in desire and heart." So that was the grand plan, but we all know sometimes that people and coaches can give speeches intending for it to come out one way, and instead it comes out completely different. But with Bud Grant, his speech hit home. Said Matt Blair, who was entering his 12th season with the Vikings and was on the silver anniversary team thanks to 6 straight Pro Bowl appearances, on how effective the speech was at resonating with the current players. Quote, "The speech was moving to some and made others mad. I thought it was right on target. The guys of the past knew how to win. Grant taught them. The young players will have to go through that period and learn." The bottom line from the speech was that the former Vikings had something that the current Vikings did not, and that was heart. And now it was time to go into the opener against the 49ers, and the players got that message. Whether it was out of respect and admiration for the ex-players, or whether it was a personal revelation, or whether it was a way to prove Bud Grant wrong, the players knew that there was only one way they were going to win this game, and that was to dig deep and show the heart he demanded. Now they were motivated, and it was time to prove it on the field. And in a shocking upset that no one saw coming, the Vikings won the game. Just like that, Bud Grant, with his speech, had saved the Vikings yet again. Because when all was said and done, the Vikings, despite entering the game against the Super Bowl champions as 11-point underdogs, won by a final score of 28-21, showing tremendous heart by scoring the final 14 points of the game, scoring a game-tying touchdown on a 1-yard run by Alfred Anderson with just under 3 minutes left, and then scoring the game-winning touchdown on a 10-yard run by Ted Brown with under 2 minutes left. Minnesota's defense, which had been the worst in the NFL in 1984, forced the 49ers to turn the ball over 7 times with 5 fumbles and 2 interceptions by Joe Montana. For some perspective, the most turnovers that the Vikings forced in any game in 1984 was just 4. And here against the 49ers, they nearly doubled that. It was truly stunning in every sense of the word. And after one game, it was clear the Vikings were officially back. The best coaches to ever be leaders in this sport have always had a way of getting the most out of their players and resonating with them. And Bud Grant was a master of that. And it's why the Vikings were consistently good under him and why the players loved playing for him. And perhaps no example better exhibited that than the 1985 speech he gave prior to the team's opener against the 49ers. Because if Bud Grant's goal was to get his players to show heart and play like the Vikings of old, then mission accomplished. The Vikings went on to have a 7-9 respectable season, and Grant retired again. Jerry Burns took over, and many of the players who were once motivated by Bud led the team to the NFC Championship in 1987. Bud could retire in peace and watch from afar as the team was in the hunt almost every year from then on. That's part 1 of our series on Bud Grant. Keep an eye out for 2 more parts on our series. I'm Matthew Collar. Thanks for watching.